Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dropkick Radio Wrestling Show, being broadcast at dropkickradio.com. It's Jeremy Graves and Martin Lacelli here, and joining us on the line at this time is the current Ring of Honor World Television Champion and also one half of the American Wolves tag team, Eddie Edwards. Eddie, welcome to Dropkick Radio. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing good, thank you. Doing very good. To begin with, Eddie, because this is the first time you've been on Dropkick Radio, if possible, Can you paint a little bit of a picture for everyone listening, and can you tell us what your earliest wrestling memory is?
It's probably the same as everybody growing up. You know, just growing up watching, being a fan. You know, the Hulkamaniacs, Ultimate Warrior, you know, Steamboat, Savage. Just growing up and watching as much as you can. You know, when you're growing up, you don't know what it is, and you're just watching and enjoying, and then, you know, slowly it forms into an obsession and it turns into your life, you know.
And what was it then that actually helped you to decide to get into pro wrestling as a career choice?
Yeah, it's hard to say that there was not one specific moment. It was just, when I was younger, you know, a fan of it and whatnot, and then I grew out of it a little bit, but then my younger brother was a big fan of it again, and that got me back into it, and I don't know what it was, but something just clicked in my mind, and I could not get enough, and I started researching where to train, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be a part of it.
Who would you say your wrestling influences are then?
Well, from a Met standpoint, I like Shawn Michaels and Savage, Steamboat. You know, the guys who were, you know, high flyers, but were good enough to be in the main events and have unbelievable matches. You know, anytime you watch them, whether, you know, it's a pay-per-view or a house show, the first match on a show anywhere, that they're going out and they're just having unbelievable matches. You know, Chris Benoit, you know, Jericho, just guys that started to help change the wrestling perspective from, you know, big men, which of course, you know, growing up, I was a fan of, you know, Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. I think everybody was, but when you start learning more about it and you start watching in China, you know, when I wanted to become a part of it, you start trying to see where you can go, or how you can get into it, and that's how you relate to guys that, you know, I relate to guys that try to fly around. I'm not a big guy, so obviously I like guys who are a little smaller and they can do a little more things. So I love watching guys with that style.
And you mentioned obviously that you're not a big guy. You like to work perhaps with the high flyers. Then is there a particular style of wrestling that you're personally a big fan of?
I don't know if I can pigeonhole it as being a fan of one style. I'm open to every style, any style really. I like to, you know, take part in any style I can and just learn, because it's like different flavors of ice cream. You know, everybody likes different things, so you can't just have your mind set on one little thing. You have to go out there and learn all different styles. And, you know, I like, you know, British style. British style is amazing to me. You know, the Japanese style, the hard hitting, the American style. You know, the down south American style. You know, where strip bad guy, good guy, boo yeah. You know, it's all different, and I've enjoyed each one of them differently. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Bringing us back up to nowadays, so to speak, as mentioned at the top of the interview, most people will know you for being the current ROH TV champion and one half of the American Wolves tag team with Davey Richards in Ring of Honor. But you actually got your start in Ring of Honor in late 2006, if I'm correct, and then by the first quarter of 2008, you became a member of the Sweet and Sour faction with Larry Sweeney. Looking back, was your first year in Ring of Honor how you expected it to be?
I don't think I didn't know what to expect at that point, because are we talking 2006 when I first got a shot there, or are you talking Sweet and Sour time?
Let's do the whole time period.
Okay. Yeah, so in 2006, I wasn't going in expecting to be put in main events and whatnot. I was going in and I just wanted just a shot, or just a chance to show what I can do and try to become a part of the roster, because I wasn't a part of that main roster at that point. I just got a few chances around the New England area where I'm from, where, you know, Boston and Connecticut shows, and a couple of New York and New Jersey shows. So I would go and just I didn't expect to be, be put in main events or be put on every show right away. I knew that I had to work my way up, and I've seen how all the other guys there had done it. You get a little bit at first, but you have to keep pushing, and you have to just prove yourself not only to the fans of Ring of Honor, but to the other people, everybody involved in Ring of Honor, to try to show that you're worth being put on every show. And then, first couple of years, 2006, 2007, I was, a few spot shows here and there. And then the idea to join the Sweet and Sour crew, the stable, came up. And at that point, I was ecstatic to do that because I knew that I would become more of a focal point. I would be able to be at more shows, be involved in bigger things. So when that came up, I think that really started getting the ball rolling as far as me being at every show and being a part of the Ring of Honor roster.
And it was during your time in Sweet and Sour where the American Wolves were formed. Can you recall how the proposal of you teaming with Davey Richards first came about, and what were your thoughts on the idea of forming the team with him?
I think it first came up between me and Davey, actually, where I believe we were on a tour in Japan together, and we noticed, we had noticed that we have somewhat similar style. As much as it is different, we do have a lot of similarities between each other, and I think it was actually part of we were doing a tag tournament in Japan. We weren't partners, but I think that helped click with the idea where we thought that we should try to give it a shot, because, I was still just starting off, in ROH on the main roster, and I was just kind of there, having my matches and stuff like that, and Davey was higher up on the card and in the company, and he came to me with the idea, and we were kicking it around, and when he brought it up, I thought it was a great idea. He really reached out to me to help me, because he thought, it would help me in my career, which obviously it has, and we thought that we could bring something completely different to tag wrestling at the time. So when it came up, and he pitched the idea to Gabe, who was the booker of ROH at the time, and the ball just started rolling from there. It was always on the back burner there. And then we were actually doing a show in Wolverhampton, England, and that's the first time we ever tagged together. It was over there against the Briscoes at a show called Independence Day, and that was the first time we tagged together. And after that first match, we had that first match, and it just really flowed, and we had chemistry, and something really clicked to us.
And where did the name the American Wolves come from?
I actually believe it's from a fan on the message board, on the Ring of Honor message board. Somebody, it was announced that we were going to start tagging, and somebody had mentioned that the first time we ever tagged was in Wolverhampton. So I guess somebody came up with the Wolves, and they figured, American Wolves, kind of like the British Bulldogs, might as well run with that. And somebody picked that. Me or Davey didn't even pick it up. Somebody else picked it up from Ring of Honor, and they ran with it. And I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out.
Well, there we go. And just to kind of bridge a gap there for listeners and possibly yourself, Eddie, the actual local soccer team here in England, known as the Wolverhampton Wanderers, their nickname, so to speak, are the Wolves. So that's probably where the link came from.
Okay, that sounds like it works to me, yeah.
There we go then. So you talked about how in Japan you spoke about the idea and you thought you could gel well together. Did you gel better than you initially thought you would as a team?
Yeah, you never really know how, until you actually put in that spot at the moment, you don't know how you're going to gel or the chemistry will be with anybody. You could have I could have my best friend for 20 years and say, hey, let's do this together. And something just might be off. You never really know. But when me and Davey, that first time in Wolverhampton, it really clicked, and you could just feel it, I think, between the two of us. And every match after that, it just grew and grew and grew and grew until, we just got to give each other a look. We know what we're thinking, and the flow of our team, I think, is just so smooth because we relate to each other and we're very comfortable with tagging with each other.
Do you prefer the art of tag team wrestling itself to perhaps singles competition?
I don't think there's a preference. I enjoy both, really. I think it was the way that I got to do it myself, where, me and Davey, we won the ROH tag belts, and we had a run with that for a while. And then, you know, I think one of the strong points of our team is that we can tag at any time, or we're also strong on our own, so we separate, and then we can do singles matches for however long. But at any time, we can come back and tag together. So I think the fact that the Wolves, that me and Davey tag together, I think that really we have a good taste of tag wrestling and singles wrestling. So I get to have a little bit of both. I don't really have to choose, which is nice.
When you first won the ROH Tag Team titles with Davey, it was at a television taping in a Tables Are Legal match. Obviously,
Yep.
it was quite an interesting title change in the sense that it was on the new HDNet television show, and there was a bit of controversy about how would that link into the current storylines and whatnot. But that aside, how was it actually winning the titles for you?
It was a big step for me. Davey had been a tag champion before, I believe, with Roderick Strong. And this is my first opportunity to capture a title, and doing it it helped my career, and it helped, I guess, my pride or my self-esteem. It just helped. It felt good to accomplish that, because it felt like a real accomplishment. As we said in 2006, I was just here and there in a few shows, and then I was a small part of Sweet and Sour, and then it felt like I was on a steady climb. So being able to win championships just really solidified, in my mind, my spot in Ring of Honor, and as a part of history, being that it was on HDNet, and we're the champions, so nobody can take that away from me or Davey. And it was just really solidified, how my travel was in Ring of Honor. It was just an uphill, and then to win that was something special.
The team that you and Davey beat to become the tag team champions were Kevin Steen and El Generico. Did you enjoy working with them?
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of brutal matches. I think it was probably the best feud of the year. Not only in Ring of Honor, but in wrestling. There was some intense stuff going on, and they brought out the best in us, and we brought out the best in them. They brought out the worst in us, and we brought out the worst in them. I really enjoyed the matches that we had, and in the end we became the champions, so I don't think there's any problem with that. But I don't think any one of us would have a problem working with each other again.
And now, one of the big points of the feud, so to speak, was in late September of that year, when heading to the peak of your rivalry with Generico and Steen, you broke your elbow the night before the big ladder match at the Glory by Honor event.
Yeah.
Now, you ended up wrestling in that match with a broken elbow, which, in itself, I dread to imagine how you were feeling. But I'll ask you that. In a second. But for those unaware, can you just explain what it was that caused the injury?
Yeah, the night before we were in Boston, actually, my hometown, and I was wrestling Kevin Steen in a street fight, and I did a tope. I dived through the ropes to the floor, and Kevin Steen threw a chair at me and moved, and as soon as I hit the floor, my elbow snapped.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I suppose the next logical question is, did you have every intention of wrestling the next night regardless, or were you given the all clear to a degree to be able to wrestle the next night?
It was completely up to me. I mean, right when it happened, I knew something was wrong, but my thought was, I'm not wrestling tomorrow, or I'm not finishing this match, because me and Steen we still wrestled a few more minutes in Boston, and then, because I didn't know exactly I thought I might have dislocated my elbow, and I was trying to pop it back in, but nothing was popping back in, so I knew something was wrong with it. So I didn't know what was going on with it until I actually got to the hospital, and they told me, it's broken, and took the x-rays, and the nurses were pretty impressed by the x-rays. But so after we did that, and they put it in a cast, I wanted to wrestle the next day. I owed it to Davey, and I really owed it to Ring of Honor, because it's such a big night that night in New York City. It's a Ladder War 2, which is a huge match, and there's been a lot of build-up. There's no way that I could pull off that show knowing what we had going into it. I just wouldn't have been able to live with that, and there was no other choice, really. So there was no second thinking or anything. I knew I had to wrestle.
that being said then, the match itself, what are your memories of it, perhaps aside from the tremendous pain you must have been in?
Yeah, I just remember I could barely move. My arm was in a cast and wrapped up and then another cast. It was so supported that I couldn't move it, which was a good thing. So I remember not being able to move my arm, and my thought as I'm going out there, with Davey is just, let's make it through this. Let's get out of here with the belts. Let's make it out of here in one piece. We knew it was going to be brutal going into it. I mean, it's a ladder war. There's no way around it. So you're going out there. There's ladders involved. There's tables involved. There's chairs. There was chains. There's a cast involved. So we went out there, and I just remember getting my ass kicked. I remember kicking ass, and eventually, thankfully, the last thing I remember is up on the ladder and Davey grabbing the belts for us to retain.
That was probably quite a very happy feeling at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a sense of relief for sure, because I felt a lot of pressure on myself just because getting injured the night before, whether it's, it's always a freak accident whenever anybody gets injured, but I couldn't help but feel obviously I feel responsible for it. And if I couldn't deliver on my end just for Davey and for Ring of Honor, I would have been really disappointed in myself. So when the match went like it did and we were able to get the belts, it felt like just a big sigh of relief when the money was over.
From there, you had surgery on your elbow, and how difficult was the recovery period for you? Or was it quite, I guess simple isn't the right word, but was it quite straightforward in the recovery process?
It was agonizing, really. I think the Tuesday after that New York City show, I believe I had surgery, and they went in and put a steel plate in my elbow with screws, I believe 8 screws or so. And so that I stayed overnight, it was a couple days thing, did that, and it was just almost more annoying than it was painful. I mean, it hurt, believe me, but it was almost annoying because I just couldn't, obviously can't bend my arm or do anything, and it just, I couldn't go to the gym, I couldn't train. All I could do was really lay in my bed and watch TV, which, sometimes that's nice, but not when I wanted to be in the gym trying to train and whatnot. And be a part of Ring of Honor. That was the worst thing, missing any shows and stuff like that. But I was doing rehab, I believe 3 days a week for a couple hours, and it was a slow process. I could bend my arm, 10 degrees, and slowly, 13, 15, and until I could finally bend my arm all the way. It took, I believe, I was doing rehab almost right when I got out of the hospital. They wanted to get me in there just so you could start moving it quickly. It was about 6 weeks of rehab, 2 or 3 times a week, and just little by little. So as much as it was frustrating, it was also good to see improvement every single time it went. So it was a long process.
Looking back, though, you were ready to wrestle on the Final Battle Internet pay-per-view in December, and given that happened in September, that's quite a feat to recover in that amount of time.
Yeah, I believe I actually 6 weeks. They had thrown out a couple different healing times. They thought maybe 6 to 8, and then when I got it checked on, they said, all right, we're looking at 8 to 12. But I think being an athlete and being a wrestler, anybody would say, somebody tells you, okay, we're thinking this amount of time. In your head, you say, okay, that's for a normal person. I'm going to come back sooner than that. And that was definitely my thinking. So at about 6 weeks actually a couple weeks after my surgery, I got a call from Pro Wrestling Noah to go over, I believe it would have been maybe November, to go over in November. So they called, and it was going to be about 6.5 weeks after my surgery when I would be going to Japan. So they asked me if I was good to go, and I had to make a decision right there. And at that point, I said, you know what? Yes, I will. I'll be good to go. I'll be ready to go. So I had no choice. I had to be ready. So 6 weeks later, I was on tour in Japan. So it was actually before the final battle match when I returned.
And I suppose then, with you going straight back to Noah then, which obviously, as you alluded to earlier, is a bit of a harder hitting style, did
Yeah.
you have any apprehensions, I suppose, going into wrestling in Noah, or was it a good test of your elbow, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I said. I guess this is one way to find out if it's going to work. It's either sink or swim, because those matches are go 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 go, and the tour is the tour alone and just the travel alone is tough. So I figured what better way to get back into it than just jump head first. So of course I was a bit apprehensive, and you never know how a surgery's going to take. You don't know how your arm's going to feel. You don't know how anything's going to react, because it's hard to. You can't practice. You can't train or do anything that'll get you ready for being in a ring, in an actual match in front of actual fans. There's nothing that compares to it. So you can't really say, all right, I'm going to do this to get my arm ready. You can't do that. You just have to go out and do it. So, I mean, I was worried, but I was also pretty confident in that my rehab was good enough, and it would hold up. And so when I went over, luckily it did, and there was no major problems at all. I mean, soreness, of course, and it would hurt time to time, but just taking care of it the way you should take care of any injury really helped it, and luckily nothing else. There was no further damage done.
And then, as I mentioned, you were back in time for the Internet pay-per-view Final Battle. Unfortunately,
Yep.
It was on that show where the American Wolves lost the tag team titles to the Briscoes. But aside from that, what are your memories of that particular event?
I believe that actually that was the night after a Virginia show where there was a ridiculous blizzard going on. And
yes, it
we
was.
had the show. Yeah, we had this show in Virginia, and we tried to drive through the night in just the awful. Nobody else was on the road. There's cars just pulled off in ditches. Just nobody's even bothering driving. But here's all the Ring of Honor wrestlers trying to make the trek up to New York City, and slowly but surely we made it. But it was just an awful, awful night of traveling. We were all just exhausted, and I think it took a toll. I know it took a toll on myself, and I think everybody was just like, wow, I cannot believe we had to do that. I mean, everybody was driving throughout the night. People were trying to sleep at the building when we got there. It was kind of a crazy time, but luckily New York City wasn't affected too bad. It was decent, so the crowd still showed up, and once that music hits to open that show, everybody in that locker room is ready to go. We could be on no sleep, injured, battered, beaten, but once that music hits and you feel that adrenaline flow, especially for an internet pay-per-view in New York City, nonetheless, everybody's ready to go. And I think that's probably my biggest memory was the amount of traveling, the tough schedule that we had going into that, and then once we were there, once it was showtime, everybody in Ring of Honor delivered. Everybody, and people behind the scenes, the wrestlers, everybody just delivered the best that we could, and really that says a lot for Ring of Honor, and I think that's one of the biggest things about Ring of Honor is that the guys in Ring of Honor, in the company, who run the company, will always deliver no matter what, and everybody just kind of really pulled together because it was a tough time, and a lot of guys are traveling together, and you had to help each other out and to be able to get through that weekend, and everybody did, and everybody made it out okay, and it was a great show.
We've had many people from Ring of Honor on over the past few weeks, and one of the questions we've been asking is, what are your thoughts on the concept of internet pay-per-view? Obviously very different from the television pay-per-view Ring of Honor was doing a few years ago, but what do you think of the internet pay-per-view as a concept going forward?
I think it's every time we've done it, it's gotten we've gotten more, more people have watched. The crowds have been amazing for it live, of course, and I think it's a real good idea. It's a market that hasn't been tested. It's a new market, and we're really taking the first step trying to do something different. And I think it's a great idea because anybody around the world, anybody who owns a computer can watch Ring of Honor at that time. And that's more than you can do on a television set, of course. And I think it's really just a great idea. And I think it's only going to get better. I mean, there's been some problems. There's been some glitches, of course. It's a new thing. There's always going to be something like that. But I think it's just going to get better and better each and every time. And the more the product gets out, the better it's going to do for Ring of Honor and for the fans of Ring of Honor for sure.
Moving back to your current direction in Ring of Honor, yourself and Davey have gone separate ways as of right now. You alluded to it earlier that you can go into singles competition and come back into tag at any point. You are currently the ROH Television Champion. You defeated Davey Richards in the final of the World Television Championship tournament. And since then, you've been involved in the 10-minute hunts, and you also had a couple of title defences this past weekend, including on the internet pay-per-view.
Yes.
So with all of that in mind then, are you happy with the current direction of yourself and the television championship from being the first champion?
Yes, I am. I am for sure, because at this point, especially last weekend, made a couple defenses, and television tapings, I've been making a few defenses, and really the goal in my head and the goal I feel I'm responsible for is to bring as much prestige to the television championship as I can. I mean, like you said, it's the first one. I'm the first champion, and that's really something big to me. And I want the title to get the recognition that the world title gets, that the tag team championships get. And it's going to take some time, and I realize that, but I don't ever want it to be overshadowed by anything. I want it to be able to stand on its own and say, that's the World Television Championship. That's a big deal. This is a championship match. That's going to be a big match. I want it to be able to stand on its own. And I think we're headed in that direction. I think it was a little slow to start. It was taking a little time to get some momentum going with it. I mean, me and Davey, I think, we beat the hell out of each other, and I think we had a pretty good match that really showed what the television championship meant to us. So we went out there and busted our asses and beat the hell out of each other, trying to capture the championship. And I think once we did that, after that match, it kind of, the momentum slowed a little, but I think it's definitely on the way. It's picking back up now. It has picked up, and that belt's going to mean a lot by the time things are done.
And in terms of the direction of yourself as well, are you looking to also wanting to be involved in the world title picture as well as being the television champion?
That's definitely a goal of myself. I think that's a goal. That has to be a goal of everybody in Ring of Honor at one time, to be a part of the world title picture and to be a champion, be the world champion. Right now, being the television champion, I feel that is my number one responsibility, and that is what I have my goal set on. Davey's doing the world title thing, and that's what he should be doing right now. And I have the TV championship. And that's my number one priority, is to, do what I said and make it prestigious and just make it make it the same as the world championship. So that's what my goal is right now. And of course, down the road, do I want to be in the title picture? Of course. That's everybody's goal. That's definitely my goal. And hopefully it will happen at some point, but right now it's the television championship.
From here, I'd like to move away from discussion on Ring of Honor for a few minutes, because I would like to talk to you about your time in Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan.
Okay.
We touched on it briefly a few minutes ago, but to begin with, can you give us a bit of background as to how you got your first opportunity to go on tour with Noah?
Yeah. I was given an opportunity to go over to just train, as they call it over there, as a young boy, which is just live at the dojo, train at the dojo, go through all the Japanese training techniques and whatnot. So I went over there and just traveled. I was not wrestling on the tours. I was just strictly in the dojo training. And I did that for 6 months. I believe it was 2005. I was over there training. And towards the end of that training session was when they said, okay, we think you're worthy enough to go on tour now. And that was my first chance to go on tour.
And were you a big follower of Japanese wrestling prior to going over to the dojo?
Yeah, I think anybody who's an educated wrestling fan realizes and understands what a part of pro wrestling that Japanese wrestling is, that it's a part of history, and so many guys that have succeeded over here in America have been through Japan at one time or another. And being a fan of American wrestling and certain guys, Benoit, Dynamite Kid, British Bulldogs, Jericho, just, that everybody had come over here. So as a fan, before even joining wrestling, I wanted to learn about the Japanese style and the Japanese wrestling. So, of course, like everybody else, I would watch my tapes and check things out. And so I was a big fan of the Japanese style. And I think, I don't know about everybody, but for a lot of people I know, one of my goals was I want to get to Japan. I want a chance to compete in Japan. And I don't want to be able to go over there and say I did it and just prove myself over there as well as over here. And I was more than happy when I was given the chance.
When it came to essentially living in the dojo and training there, I realise it was a few years ago, but can you kind of describe to us a typical day whilst you were in the dojo and also living there, kind of how it would go down for you?
Yeah. Even though it's a few years ago, I'm not forgetting that anytime soon. We would wake up around 9 or so, 10 or so, 10 o'clock in the morning, get up, get all ready. Me and there's a few other young boys at the time, we would go up to the dojo, make sure everything's straightened up there before the other wrestlers would get there, the other trainers would get there. So, make sure everything's all straightened out. 11 o'clock, the training would begin. We'd go through all the different calisthenics, all the ab work, all the neck bridges, all the squats, all the push-ups, all the bumps, everything else we would do. We'd do that for a couple hours, go back down to where we were living. We're in the same luckily we're in the same building at the time, the Kaskujo, which is where we live. That was down below where all the weights in the ring was. So we would go downstairs, make what's called chanko, which is a sumo wrestling stew that wrestlers have taken themselves now. It's like tofu and vegetables and pork and chicken. Make that up. All the guys would come down, eat, and eat some more. And then after that, everybody usually pass out for a while. And then I'll go back up to the gym and work out on a specific, body part or whatever. You had time to do whatever on your own. But that would be every day except for Sunday. So 6 days a week, we'd be doing that schedule.
Wow. And in terms of adjusting to the Japanese culture, many people have said in the past it's either something that they loved or they hated. Is it fair to assume that you were someone that really liked it and adjusted to it well?
Yeah. I don't know if I would have been able to stay for 6 months if I didn't like, the Japanese style or whatnot. But yeah, I feel like it took a while. The other guys in the dojo weren't great at speaking English. They spoke, a little bit, and I was studying my Japanese, and they were studying their English. So it took time to get used to, and the training took time to get used to for sure, because my body was not used to that type of training. I've always heard stories. You hear stories of how the Japanese dojos are, but you never know until you're over there, in there, doing it. And when I adjusted to the style, to the training, to the food, to the culture, I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed learning more and more, not only about wrestling, but about the culture and just the way it is over there. And I enjoyed my time, and I enjoy it every time I go over there. I really do.
And are there any plans in the work to return to Noah anytime soon?
October 15th, I believe. I travel over on October 13th, and it's a NTV Junior Heavyweight Tag Tournament, which is October 15th to October 30th.
There we go, everyone.
And me and the Ring of Honor World Champion Roderick Strong will be teaming up.
Oh, there we go. So the television and the world champion together.
Yep, and I think that's something different. I think we have a lot to prove out there. We're Team Noah. We're going to represent,
Now, to talk about some sad news in a way regarding Noah, the passing of the late Mitsuharu Misawa. Obviously, he was literally the face of pro wrestling Noah, and it was a tragedy when he did pass away. But if you don't mind me asking, how did you find out about the news, and what are your memories of Misawa?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the ROH guys found out at the same time. It was a weekend where we were doing a double shot, and I don't remember where we were, but I remember we were down in the lobby of a hotel waiting for the vans, and we were going to start traveling. And I believe D'Lo Brown got a call from Bison, who was over in Japan at the time, and we just saw the look on D'Lo's face, and he was, you could tell that something had happened, and he was asking Bison, these questions, and we're all looking at each other like, what's going on, what's happening, and when he hung that phone up, and when he told us, it was like a kick in the gut. It was so hard to believe that, and I mean, America, guys have passed away, but never in the ring like that, and it was really just mind blowing. None of us could fathom what had happened. Everybody just kind of had this look like, oh, I can't believe this, and other guys in the Ring of Honor who had been to Noah, like, it was really just unheard of, and we just couldn't believe it. Even now to think about it, that time of when it happened, it's still even hard to think of, and it's really hard to accept that happened,
Yeah. And focusing on perhaps the positive memories of Misawa, then, have you got a particular memory of Misawa that stands out to you?
Well, besides getting my face forearmed off, I had the chance to go to be in social settings with him, which was interesting, as far as a karaoke place and getting requests from Misawa to sing the Beach Boys. I guess I think that's one of my top memories is him asking if I know Beach Boys and then having to perform a nice song for Misawa. I think that's a real good memory that I will keep for the rest of my life because it's kind of surreal in itself. So Misawa and the Beach Boys in the same sentence, who would ever know those would go together?
That really is amazing.
And who would know that Misawa was a Beach Boys fan? I was shocked, but I was more than happy to sing. Whether or not it did a good job, who knows?
Another part of history in pro wrestling, Noah, that you were involved in was their first full show in Europe that happened here in the UK. It was in the summer of 2008, the European Navigation event at the Coventry Skydome. You were featured in the GHC Junior Tag Team title match that saw you and Bryan Danielson take on the then champions Taiji Ishimori and Kenta. It's quite a simple question, really, but what are your memories of that entire event?
I thought it was a great event. I mean, first of all, getting to the building itself, the building was a great building. Obviously I had no idea what the Skydome was going to be or what it would look like, and getting in there and that whole setup for the show was just great. It had a big show feeling for sure. There's shows where you just know, where you just have that feeling like, wow, this is going to be something special. And when that crowd filed in there, and that first match happens, and you can tell that crowd is just jacked, and they are just ready to see. They are just ready to stand up and explode. They're just ready to watch and ready to have a good time. You can really feel that. You can really feel it in the air. You know what I mean? So when we saw that crowd and we saw the setup and the way that crowd was going, it was really just a good time. And then for our match, I thought our match was. I enjoyed our match. Besides losing and besides not winning the championship with Bryan, but I thought the feel of that crowd just really amped everybody up, and I could feel it for sure.
Was it what you expected going in, how the crowd was, and I guess the reaction in the end you got? Was it what you expected going in?
I don't know really what I expected. When a Japanese pro wrestling company travels to another country. It's kind of a daring move, and you never know how it's gonna turn out. And you obviously hope for the best. And I don't think you could ask for more really by the British fans to show up. The people that showed up there, very knowledgeable of pro wrestling Noah, which is a great thing to see, and to go out there and to have the reaction that not only our match had, but the show in general was a real. It made, I think, everybody in the company feel like they accomplished something going over to England and having such a successful show.
Are you surprised that they haven't returned to the UK or Europe in general?
I actually am. I had recently thought about that. Yeah, I know a couple of the guys. From time to time, they travel to England and to Germany, and they do little excursions, but they haven't ran a complete Noah show in England. And I am a little surprised, but who knows? Who knows what's in the works? You know, hopefully it'll happen again sometime soon.
And focusing on wrestling in the UK still in general, a show that you mentioned earlier, the Independence Day event, where, as we have now learnt, the American Wolves were born.
Yep.
What are your memories of that entire weekend? Because it was quite a big weekend in many ways here in the UK, but what are your memories of it?
Oh, that was an interesting weekend. That was a really fun weekend. Martin and Ben, the guys who had put on the show, and we had a lot of Ring of Honor guys there, and it was a real good. It was also another sense of accomplishment for, you know, guys from Ring of Honor and all over England to get together and put on this sort of hybrid show, and to go out there and I feel it was successful. I think everybody who was there feels it was a success, and to have that crowd there once again, and the crowd was amped up and the crowd was enjoying everything. So to be able to do that, to put it together with English guys, with Ring of Honor guys, it was once again a sense of accomplishment. And I think it was a real fun weekend. And even after the shows going around in England with the English guys and Martin and Ben, who really took really great care of us, they just showed us a really good time in England. So that weekend, I know it was fun for everybody involved. Everybody had a really, really good time.
And another person who you've worked for is Brian Dixon.
Yep.
Now, for those listening who aren't aware, Brian Dixon runs All Star Promotions, which I think it's fair to say it's more of a family-orientated product, and they go around all of the summer camps in the UK and other venues as well. And what was that experience like for you, Eddie? It must have been something quite different to what you expected.
Yeah, it was different. I had heard stories, you know, back home of what goes on over there and how it is, but really nobody can explain to you how it is. I mean, it was just, you know, traveling from the Butlins camps, those summer camps, you know, every day just getting in a van with the guys, and the guys over there were great. I like Frankie Sloan and Kid Cool and the Zebra Kid was there, and it was such a mix of characters that you are with them nonstop, and you have no choice but to. You start, you know, just you have a connection, you have a bond, because you're just traveling around England, doing these shows at Butlins and these theaters, and you're just going out there. You're having these matches. The crowd's going nuts, boo, yay, and then you just get back in a van. You go out, you go wherever, and you go to the next show. And it was something completely different than I had done. You know, in Noah in Japan, we have, you know, the bus and we go from show to show, but I mean, in England, for Dixon, it was every day, just travel, wrestle, do whatever, travel, wrestle. You know, it was just a real taste of the English style for me, and I enjoyed it so much. I had a good time, and I've been trying to get back, but my schedule just hasn't worked out at this time, and which I guess is a good thing. But I want to get over there as soon as I can and just do it again, because I really love it. I had such a great time over there.
And I know you just said that your schedule's quite booked up at the moment, but are there any plans in the works at the moment to come back to the UK?
I've been in talks about getting over there, but just, I was trying to get over in October, and it fell through because of Japan coming up and other schedules back here, unfortunately, because it's been really way too long since it's been over. But in December, I'll be going to Germany, and I may be also be in England with Davey at some point. I'm not sure of the exact schedule, but as soon as I find out, I'll let you know for sure.
Excellent stuff, and we'll be more than happy to publicise that here for you.
Thank you.
And in terms of wrestling in the UK, once again, can you share any particular stories with us that maybe during your time, be it for All Star or any other events that you've been with, that maybe no one else has heard before?
I don't know if I want those stories getting out. I don't. Well, I guess I was over there with Brian Daniels from the American Dragon. This was one one that can get out is fine. It's actually pretty fun. So me and Brian Daniels from the American Dragon were tagging at one of the Butland shows, and he would go out and he would sing the national anthem every single time, sing the national anthem, and the crowd, of course, would hate it and would not shut. They don't want him to shut up and this and that. So we've done it a few times, and we go out, and he says, "All right, I'm now going to sing my national anthem, the American national anthem, while Eddie Edwards dances to the right of me," which I did not know. I did not know that was the plan, but I jumped right in, and I pulled out the Running Man, the Cabbage Patch, and I had a great time. And it was just one of those moments where you can't help but laugh while you're out there, and I couldn't stop laughing. I had such a good time. And that happened more than once where I was out at the ring having a blast, and you're just smiling, you're just having fun, and it was really something else.
That's such a great story. And to wind down the interview with, it has been revealed that both yourself and Davey Richards are re-signing with Ring of Honor, which is great news for all of us wrestling fans out there. Also, Davey, having re-signed, has now confirmed he is not going to be retiring at the end of the year. Yep. My first question in relation to this is Ring of Honor going to become a full-time priority for you? And how long, perhaps, obviously I don't want to go into your contract details, obviously, but can you give us any indication as to how long we can be expecting Eddie Edwards to be in Ring of Honor for?
I don't think there's a way to say. I mean, I would love being a part of Ring of Honor, and right now Ring of Honor is my full-time, engagement. Between that and Noah, everything else gets worked around my Ring of Honor schedule, and it's definitely the place where I enjoy being and I want to be. That's why I resigned there, and that's why Davey resigned there, because it's really the place to be where, for a professional wrestler, where we can be creative, where we go out there and do what we want. And for the next, who knows? I mean, obviously there's no way to say for sure, but definitely for the next year, I'm going to be there. And I don't know Davey's situation, so I can't comment on that. But at least the next year, and really, I don't see me going anywhere else right now.
And obviously, you've both re-signed. Is it likely we're going to get the American Wolves coming back at some point down the line?
Well, for sure. That's definitely going to happen. I mean, we're always ready to tag, and I think the time coming up is the best time it could be. I'm the television champion. Davey's going to be getting a shot at the World Championship, and why not round it out with the Tag Team Championship? The Wolves can have all the belts in Ring of Honor for the first time. One team will hold everything in Ring of Honor, and I think that we have a legit shot of doing that.
There we go, everyone. With that being said, Eddie, it's been a fantastic interview. Thank you so much. And I'm now going to open up the floor to you. If there's anything you'd like to say to all of our listeners from around the world, if you'd like to plug any forthcoming events or websites, the floor is yours.
Okay. Great. Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for having me on. I had a great time, great interview, and like I said, anytime I've been over in England, the crowd, the fans have been great, and I know that the Ring of Honor itself gets a lot of fans from England and overseas, and please just keep supporting Ring of Honor, keep supporting wrestling in general, just be a true fan. You guys are why we do it. This is why we do it. This is why we break our arms and wrestle the next night. This is why people get injured and keep fighting to do it for you guys. For Ring of Honor, support Ring of Honor, support wrestling. Just please understand what we do and why we do it. And it's for you guys. So enjoy it the best you can. And please keep coming back. Keep ordering the internet pay-per-views. Keep going to the shows. Support local wrestling in England. Just support wrestling in general. We do it for you guys. And if you have time, go to e-edwards.net and check out my website, please.
There we go, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. And if you can just hold the line as we go to a commercial break, and everybody listening, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Dropkick Radio.